Gene Yuzuku here, Managing Principal with Innovius LLC. I'm here today to discuss multifamily development in Baltimore City, in particular the Harlem Park community, where I believe a new narrative embracing bold possibilities is underway. In terms of my love and vision for Baltimore City, in particular Harlem Park, I'm looking to create quality, reasonably priced, modern urban living opportunities. What do I mean by urban living? I believe that urban living incorporates styles and tastes from a variety of modern development traits to include a variety of items such as open floor plans, high ceilings, large windows, natural lighting, skylights, rooftop decks, chic appliances and furnishings, fresh, clean, and crisp aesthetic, and also optimizes the use of space while minimizing and eliminating harsh environmental impacts and maximizing flow, efficiency, and functionality. Now, when we talk about Baltimore City, I want to start off from like a 30,000-foot view and then sort of drill down and drill in. When we talk about Baltimore City, I think it's extremely important to put Baltimore City in context. For those of you who have not been to Baltimore and had boots on the ground in Baltimore, I think it's extremely important to really get a feel for the entire city. And I believe this map sort of highlights that. And this map sort of underscores the mosaic, which is Baltimore City, made up of a variety of different neighborhoods and communities and so forth. And so part of Baltimore's context is understanding its history in urban renewal, redlining, white flight, its drug pandemic, economic downturn, the mass exodus, governance, as well as what we're seeing today in Baltimore's resurgence through a convergence of resources that are focused on Baltimore and have a $10 billion plan over the next 10 years to invest $1 billion to help revitalize and reconstruct Baltimore to a thriving city, which it once was. As you can see, I'm focusing here in Harlem Park. One point I wanted to really underscore was governance in Baltimore City. I think this slide and this topic in particular is one that is not given enough credit. I believe that governance in Baltimore is critical. I believe in most major cities, regardless of political affinity or affiliation, governance is critical in terms of the impact that a CEO has on its own organization. The mayor has that same impact. And as you can see, over the past couple of decades, Baltimore has not had a second-term elected mayor since Martin O'Malley. And I think that's critical because in terms of the direction of the city, trajectory of the city, the mayor sets the tone. And I think that now the current mayor, Brandon Scott, has the ability to set that tone and chart that course. And then with that brings a level of consistency and calm and confidence in the direction that Baltimore wants to move in. And when we talk about Baltimore, I would be remiss if I did not mention historic Old West Baltimore, which was a critical staple in the city in terms of culture and heritage. Old West Baltimore consists of a couple of different neighborhoods, Harlem Park, Upton, Madison Park, Druid Heights, and Sandtown Winchester. These communities were once rich in ethnic heritage, history, historic landmarks, culture, and architectural charm. They also are significant given that Old West Baltimore is under the National Register of Historic Places. More so, Baltimore played a critical role in the implementation of new community planning and development initiatives, such as urban renewal. Now, when you look at Baltimore from a historical standpoint, again, it was a premier African-American neighborhood where in the 1890s, African-Americans gained political power, established social institutions, started businesses, and empowered churches to guide spiritual life and spread social progress throughout the community. However, in the context of this, significant changes took place with the community with the success of civil rights movements and the end of legally mandated segregation. For example, Brown v. the Board of Education. This decision to create separate but equal doctrine ended racial segregation in public accommodation. Now, as we look and zoom in Harlem Park, the end of racial segregation and public accommodation allowed African Americans to live, shop, dine, and seek entertainment in areas where they once were forbidden. This led to a decline of one of the most historical Black areas within historical Old West Baltimore along Pennsylvania Avenue, which was a viable retail entertainment center that experienced white flight, redlining, and blockbusting. As a result, Old West Baltimore became entangled in a downward spiral of blight, decay, and high unemployment. And soon as communities such as Harlem Park, Upton, Madison Park, Druid Heights, and Sandtown Winchester became designated urban renewal areas. Now, when you talk about urban renewal areas, this is an example. This is the highway to nowhere. And as part of the highway to nowhere, you have to think about how you go from this to this. And as you can see, community engagement is critical. This transformation, which is represented in the bottom picture, is an excerpt from the Harlem Park Neighborhood Master Plan, which contemplates a bold re-envisioning not only of the Harlem Park community, but also a part of that community, which is the highway to nowhere. And again, community engagement is critical to move from A to B, in which case engaging the community through community meetings and events is critical. Being part of a community, embedded in the community, with the community cleanups, engaging the community leadership and stakeholders to gain insight, perspective, and solicit feedback around major community concerns, be it blight, trash, illegal dumping, parking, or other amenities. Being consistent and constant around open communication and transparency, and being responsive to issues, particularly as they pertain to your property, be it overgrowth, illegal dumping, property security, and access. But most importantly, the community engagement piece from my perspective was being a board member on the Harlem Park the Harlem Park Community Development Corporation, which brought to life the Harlem Park Neighborhood Master Plan. And again, that master plan charts a bold new vision for the community that was community driven, community inclusive, and comprehensive. Now, when we zoom into Harlem Park, and just note that the information from 2022 was only for the first 4 months of 2022. But as you can see, there's an upward trend in terms of the permit activity taking place in Harlem Park, which is a good indicator that things are moving in the right direction. And sort of backtracking to the previous slide, when you think of the highway to nowhere and how we get to that new bold vision of Harlem Park, that master plan really sets off a lot. And once adopted by the municipality, it gives the municipality a green light to fund certain initiatives, be it streetscaping, be it infrastructure, be it school modernization. All of those things come into play in the master plan, and those funds can be aligned with various initiatives that are highlighted or indicated in that master plan. But I wanted to show this slide to sort of give you a sense of the momentum taking place in Harlem Park, where you can see clearly sort of an increase of the rehabilitation activity. Now, when we get to the property itself, my particular project, 1501 Edmondson Avenue, it was once vacant for over 40 years. It was an eyesore, a nuisance property, filled with lead paint, site of illegal and illicit activity, be it illegal dumping, loitering, drug activity, public urination, which impairs a community's appeal and depresses property value. It did have a significant lot size. The interior was about 4,400 square feet to include a basement, first floor, second floor, and third floor. And its last authorized use was as a 5-unit multifamily dwelling and was previously owned by 10 NC Properties LLC from 2007 to 2016. In 2016, I purchased the property, and my intent was to downsize from 5 units to 4 units, as you can see. Now, one interesting thing about this photo is a picture from the front door through the property. As you can see, there seems to be a lot of illumination and light coming from it, which represents a skylight that was actually in the property when I purchased it. And I'll share more insight on that in the next slide. Now, when we get into the property, as I mentioned before, you know, it's important to know if you're investing in Baltimore, particularly areas that have been historically neglected. You have to have the appetite for what you may run into. As you can see, 1501 Edmondson Avenue is the end unit here. But as you look up the block, you can see various properties, particularly this one with particularly no roof. And as you can see, my property, there's a huge hole in the roof, which is where that natural light was coming from in the previous photo. But again, you have to have the appetite for what you may run into when you're doing development in Baltimore. So here's just a few shots of what I experienced or the condition of the property that I purchased. Right, this is the shot from an angle where you can see the front, the side. Here's the rear. Here's the interior. And after I had the building gutted, the contractor that I used inadvertently in removing the rear fire escape pulled down the back wall. That created a whole host of issues that I had to deal with. One, and most importantly, being securing the property. And then lastly, the interior, once the interior demolition was complete. So again, I think it's very important to really gauge and assess your appetite for the scale, scope, and type of development you want to be involved in. The work is not easy, risk is involved, a lot of uncertainties can take place and occur that you have to be prepared for. Let's talk about the product. Again, as I mentioned before, the building's authorized uses as a 5-unit. I'm looking to downsize to 4 units, and I figured that to create a bit more spacious units. So we're going with 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. However, the 4th unit, which is going to be this top unit, I'm looking to retain for myself as a primary residence, where in this design, I include sort of a loft area and a rooftop terrace in the front, a balcony, and each unit will have sort of its own sort of deck area. As we continue to look at the product, again, as I mentioned, each unit will have sort of a 2-bedroom, 2-bath interior design. This first unit, the basement unit, will have its entrance in the rear of the building. And this unit in particular, because of the egress, I couldn't call this room in the rear a bedroom, so we'll call that a den, but it's essentially a bedroom. And again, unit 2, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. Unit 3, the bedrooms will book in the units. And unit 4, which will be my personal residence, the first bedroom will be toward the front of the property. The second bedroom will be in the loft area in the rear. So again, trying to incorporate the urban design concept, natural light, open floor plans, modern amenities, etc. Now, when you talk about investment and risk, a lot goes into rehabbing these buildings. I think this is where it's critically important to really have your ducks in a row, to really understand the numbers and what goes into the numbers, and be able to triangulate what's legitimate in terms of estimates that you get from general contractors. So you have to really do your homework and really have a sense of the market and what's going on. So when you look at this particular investment, this 4-unit, again, we're talking about around 4,400 square feet. I bought the building in 2016 for $5,000. I think that was a great deal. And I'm anticipating soft costs of around $13K, hard costs of around $440, and hard cost contingency of around 10%. This is around, again, $44,000. They bring me to a total of 500 to 1,234. Now, when you look at the rehab costs, meaning soft costs and hard costs, my per square foot cost is around 112. And I think that's sort of in the middle of what the square footage in Baltimore is going for, between 100 and 125 bucks per square foot. So I'm in that range, which gives me a sense of confidence that the numbers I did receive make sense. Now, when you're dealing with a property or an investment in an area that has been historically neglected, there are a variety of hurdles that you will have to overcome. In these areas, there are no sales comps, right? So it's going to be hard to follow the traditional route to financing. Uh, So nonetheless, there are a couple of things, a couple of routes you can go, be it hard money or find a community lender that is well versed in lending in areas such as this. Nonetheless, you have to be able to substantiate the loan. And so for my particular loan, I can finance up to 75% of the after repaired value, which means that in order to get the money needed to renovate the property, my property, based on my designs and floor plans, has to appraise to around 650. Today's interest rate environment, you're looking at about 7.25, which brings my monthly payment and interest to about 3310. Estimating taxes and insurance around 350, bringing my total monthly payment, PITI, to around 3660. Now, we include monthly operating costs, you're talking about 4260 in total PITI and operating expenses. The good thing, I looked around, checked around on rentalmeter.com and look for, rental comps for 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, etc. And the average was actually 1555 for a 2 bedroom, 2 bath apartment unit. And so even with renting 3 units and keeping one for myself, I'm still able to clear 240 a month, which puts me in the green. Now, if I decide to rent that, I could rent that fourth unit for about 1,700, 1,750 a month. Add it to that 240, 250 a month. I think I'm making out okay. But again, there's so much you have to contemplate when you're talking about investing in an area that has been historically neglected. But these are some of the things that you have to contemplate. Does the deal make sense? What's your exit strategy? What's your end game? What's your end goal? And at the end of the day, I believe that this investment, for me personally, long term, I'm looking to not only gain cash flow, but also gain equity. There's a lot of momentum in Harlem Park. There are a lot of things happening in Harlem Park and around Harlem Park. Part of what's being contemplated is a joint master plan between Harlem Park and Sandtown Winchester. Once that plan gets combined and gets adopted by the city, that will set off an additional round of investments that can take place in both communities that can totally transform that area and make it more appealing. So I want to be able, I think I'm right in the right place at the right time to take advantage of those opportunities. With that, I want to open the floor to any questions.
Gene, this was awesome. Thank you so much for not only taking the time to break it down, but the level of transparency that you put on the floor, I think needs to be commended. So thank you for that. I've
Sure.
got a couple of questions. You got a few minutes?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. So so why Harlem Park and why 1501 Edmondson? Of all the you got 200 and what 44 other neighborhoods that you could have chosen, and
Right.
okay, you landed on Harlem Park. You probably got 245 other vacant properties you could have chosen in Harlem Park. And I'm not hating on Harlem Park. Don't take that the wrong way.
Right.
I love Harlem Park. But why Harlem Park? Why 1501 Edmondson?
So Harlem Park, I stumbled across it by chance. At the time, I was living in Washington Village, Pigtown, commuting to Washington, D.C. to work. And one day I decided to take a different way to work. I found out that there was another MARC train station other than Camden Yards. That was a 5-minute drive and it had an express train that got you to DC quicker. So one morning I took the Penn Line train from West Baltimore, and I came back a little late. And normally I take Route 40 to connect to MLK to go back to Pigtown. So this time I decided let me just peruse the neighborhood, and I hit Edmondson Avenue, made a right turn, and as I was driving, I was sort of taken aback by the beauty of the city, by the beauty of the neighborhood. It was at nighttime. And I said, wow, these are some huge buildings. And right across from 1501 Edmondson Avenue, you have Harlem Park itself. And then within that, you have, at the time, there were three schools, the elementary, middle, and high school, and also a recreation center. And so my initial reaction was like, wow, it took me back to my childhood where I used to spend summers in East Orange, New Jersey. And one of my oldest sister actually lived across from Elmwood Park. And I had my second oldest sister that lived up the street from Sawville Park. So the proximity to the park was a real attraction to me because I remember my summers I would wake up, go across the street to the park and the playground. I would be there all day. So I had a great time. And so that was really what drove me to it. Now, Edmondson Avenue, 1501 Edmondson. One, it's an in unit, and I just got that building by chance. I happened to litter the area with flyers, and they responded, and we were able to make a deal. I guess they were tired of holding on to it. They might have had ideas of where the communities are going to go, and things weren't moving at the pace that they wanted to see. So, I think I came across them at the right time to strike a good deal. And I felt like, you know, sort of taking a playbook out my experience working for DC Council as a director for business and economic development for the Ward 5 council member. I learned a lot about development from the perspective of developers, where they are seeking opportunities in communities that have great bones. And secondarily, um, to some extent, some of the more pioneering developers want to find that in places that people aren't looking. And I felt that Harlem Park checked all of those boxes, and it was a matter of time. Now, when you
Nice.
start peeling back the layers of, those sort of great bones, what does that mean? What does that look like? Again, a huge inventory of houses, inexpensive, great architecture. The structures are solid. It's still downtown Baltimore. You have access to the major thoroughfares in terms of Route 40, 83, 295, et cetera. And then you also have transportation, the Penn Line to get you to DC. At the time, about 40 minutes was the express train ride. So the combination of all those things led me to Harlem Park, and I just was fortunate enough to ink a deal for 1501 Edmondson Avenue.
There you go. So it sounds like I think I happenstanced on Harlem Park the same way. I think I might have gotten lost trying to find a property as a real estate agent back in the day and drove down Lafayette Avenue, came across Lafayette Park. It was just like dumbfounded at the size and just how massive those homes were surrounded by these parks. I just fell in love with it, to be perfectly
Indeed.
honest with you. It was it wasn't trying to go from Washington Village to DC that I got lost, but nonetheless, I did get lost there. And you and I have history, man. That property that you that you lived on in Washington Village, I sold to you. So
Indeed. Indeed.
so
That's how life goes full circle, man. We're back at it.
exactly, exactly. And it's so funny because we did, I think you might have we bought probably about a half a dozen houses, give or take, between over the years
Right.
and before the market crash, and then we lost contact. And then we reconnected because we both took part in the develop the developer program, which was
Indeed.
hosted by Freddie Mac and Home for USA, Grow America. Shouts out to all those folks. We reconnected there, and it was just like, wow. My hair was gray, and I think your hair was gone, and so it was it was good reconnecting, man. But wow, what gives you the confidence to take on a 40 year-long vacant property? Is it your BA in economics from Bucknell, or is it the MBA from University of Maryland that gives you the backbone to want to take on this property and really understand what's going on, especially with the numbers? Because you're not listening to somebody that doesn't know the numbers side of the game. So talk to me about
Right. Indeed. I think it's a combination of those things and just sheer desire to really be transformative. As I mentioned before, I was heavily involved in the Harlem Park master planning process.
that.
But even prior to that, I mentioned I served as director of business economic development for the Ward 5 council member in Washington, D.C. And in that role, I was very instrumental in driving the Industrial Land Transformation Task Force and sort of ensuring that the council members' initiatives did not get lost in that effort to transform those industrial lands into more profitable and useful and active assets for the city. And so going through that process and sort of stumbling across Harlem Park, to me, it was all the same. The only difference is that I wasn't the one driving the process. And so this is not just a project that I want to do. It's also a project of sort of validation to begin to really stand up in that development space and to impact communities and to bring quality housing opportunities to the market. I think that is sort of my drive, and all the academic and educational things help facilitate that, be it the BA in economics, be it the MBA from University of Maryland, be it the project management certification. I
Mhm.
hold all those things come to bear in a project of this scale and scope and nature.
For sure, for sure. So, in your governance slide, you were mentioning how, after since Governor O'Malley, we finally have a Brandon Scott, a mayor who's been reelected and been able to serve. I guess he's serving his second term, um, as a solution for a little bit more stability when it comes to initiatives. But I think one other thing that added on to that is finally having a governor that believes that Maryland doesn't thrive unless Baltimore City thrives. What's your opinion on that?
I think that is like a what do you call it? Like a Red Bull, a shot of Red Bull, right? Giving Baltimore some wings, right?
Right.
One, hats off to Mayor Brandon Scott, because again, I think that's
No doubt.
phenomenal that it's been such a stretch. And
Hmm.
when you look at how other cities have evolved, be it Atlanta, be it Pittsburgh, be it Washington, D.C., I think that either there's been consistency at the helm or it's been sort of a marathon, right? And that behind the baton handoff has been extremely smooth. Not only that, I would also dare say um, that, when you look at Baltimore's history in terms of its governance, I equate the changing of the guard sort of, it's
Mhm.
almost like, you know, if you look at a football game, right? Each quarter, you're changing your head coach and coaching staff,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
That
Right.
sends a lot of turbulence through the rest of the organization. And so,
Mhm.
now that turbulence has been removed, we have some stability, some consistency. Not only does Baltimore galvanize around that, but the rest of the market, the outward market, the investor market, the housing market, all these various markets that create the economy of Baltimore can sort of galvanize and stabilize around that consistency. So I think, that's a point that uh, I want to underscore. I don't think it's talked about enough. And
Mhm.
then the fact that you have a governor that's in lockstep with the mayor, all we need now is our federal partners to step in and step up. And we have the trifecta.
Shout out to Governor Westmore, Mayor
Indeed.
Brandon Scott, for sure. I was having a conversation with Brian O'Toole today from the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development about
Right.
the
Good guy.
Uplift program. Great guy. And we had a really good conversation. And one of the things that came up was that, Harlem Park, Sandtown, Winchester, is not included in the opportunity zone, hub zone, enterprise zone, nobody zone. Right. And consistently has been left out of different, citywide incentive programs. But the Maryland DHCD uplift program now encompasses Harlem Park and Sandtown Winchester, on top of many other areas within the city. I think that that adds an extra layer of just overall highlighting and awareness to the potential in Harlem Park. So I'm very excited about that for sure.
Definitely.
So last question. When it comes to the redevelopment of the property, and I've seen the plans, very, very detailed. I love what you're doing there. Have you considered any well, I got two questions actually. Have you considered any environmental certifications like LEED or Energy Star or anything of the like, is my first question. And my second question is if you were to go down that route, do you think like a green certified appraiser would help fill in that appraisal gap that is often a barrier to development in some of these historically redlined communities?
Well, I would say this. I have contemplated that because that space would be new to me. I felt that maybe this project wouldn't be the ideal project to sort of go down that route. However, in terms of green and energy efficiency, and Energy Star and things of that nature, those are all contemplated, right? And so, I was quite sort of surprised in speaking with Brian uh, when it was communicated that the net zero loan program sort of was no longer being funded. And I felt that that program could have been a great asset um, to help address some of the things that you speak about in terms of energy efficiency and lead and so forth and so on. And
Hmm.
so hopefully, that program gets funded at some point or in the future so that that can be an asset for folks in my situation and others that would like to go in that direction. But we'll see.
Well, the good news is that the uplift program does have a building standard to it. And Brian was nice enough to send me an early version of the building standard that has, enterprise green communities and Energy Star, certain, efficiency requirements, not necessarily net zero. And then was consulting him on just maybe adding, like I didn't see anything that said anything about health and wellness of building occupant, and maybe something
Right.
having to do with indoor air quality and stuff like that. And so maybe there might be a good intersection where maybe they got rid of one program, but they've actually built a standard for this loan program, which I think is awesome. But
And if you think about it, between, the health and energy efficiency pieces, I don't think they should be or need to be mutually exclusive.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, where I sit, when when it comes to greenhouse gas reduction and climate change, resiliency, sustainability, it's the focus is on energy reduction, renewable energy, and rarely does the health and wellness of the building occupant come into the conversation. But what I found is that when you lead with health and wellness of building occupant and the health and wellness, experience within the property, the energy efficiency pieces fall into place
And I
directly
think that
behind it.
to some extent it's assumed when you talk about energy efficiency, because when you talk about like air quality, right? The heat pumps or the HVAC systems that we use now, the technology has been upgraded, right? So you assume that these technological upgrades improve the air quality, right? And so to some extent, folks maybe may not be as conscious of that aspect as they need to be or should be. And so that's probably why, I would be a big proponent of the conversation around health and energy efficiency being sort of convergent versus mutually exclusive.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And I think the way to validate it all at the end of the day is the air quality monitoring, right? So, a lot of the builders and developers that we're speaking to, I'm asking the question, are you, putting an active or a passive radon, system in the house? Are you measuring, a lot of times we're sold low to no VOC, volatile organic compound materials, adhesives, paints. But unless somebody's actually monitoring and validating, you don't know, that you've actually got what you paid, a little bit of a premium for.
So again, to your point, air quality is critical. And I think that because of of how things have improved technologically, we sort of assume that those things are already baked into the renovation, into the rehabilitation of a property.
They're not, because people have been so focused on the 1%, which
Right,
is the energy,
right,
right? But the bulk of what you're going to spend, especially if you're a business in an office type environment, is on, the health and wellness of your employees, salaries, those types of things. But,
right,
you've heard me say this before, we spend 90% of our lifetimes indoors. 70% of that time is spent inside of our homes, 14 to 16 hours per day inside of our homes. The majority of that time spent in our bedrooms. And the indoor air quality is about 100 times worse than the outdoor air quality. I was watching on the news yesterday about the forest fires they had out west, and this person in Pasadena, their house didn't burn down. It wasn't affected by the
wow,
flames, but it's inhabitable because of the toxic fumes that are now in the home because of all the wildfire smoke. Like, he
right,
can't even occupy the house. And on
right,
top of that, the $5,000 insurance deductible that he needs to pay doesn't even pay for the damage, because the insurance company is saying, well, there's no visible damage. But what we measure and what we monitor and what we're advocating for are the things that we can't see, smell, or taste that'll absolutely cause major problems. And you recall from the developer program, we were in a LEED certified building. I won't name which one it was. I normally do, but I won't do it today. And I had my air quality monitors with me.
right,
And every couple of minutes you'd hear beep. And
right.
that meant the carbon dioxide was at a unsafe level. And so I was kept trying to open up the doors to let some fresh air in. But yeah, so it's a thing. And and so I'm always advocating for that whenever I have the opportunity. But I can't wait to see. I've got a chance to peek into the property at 1501 Edmondson. I've got nothing but praises for what you're doing over there. Your thought leadership, your subject matter expertise. This is exactly what we were looking for our conference this year. Our theme is
Great.
healthy, smart, high performance homes, the case for expansion, innovation, and affordability. You knocked it out the ballpark, bro.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated.
Absolutely, absolutely. So keep us posted on your progress, and have a great weekend, my man.
Will do. You do the same. Thanks a lot, Aaron.
All right, peace.
Take care.